we have two brands that I'm sure no one has ever heard of before. Tiny little startups. We've got Karen from Bondi Sands and Eleanor from Iconic London. So please, Tash, if you'd like to join us up on stage, please welcome to stage Karen and Eleanor.
Hello, welcome to the stage.
Hello.
Thank you.
So this is Karen, everybody, who is the General Manager of Bondi Sands, and Eleanor, who is the E-commerce Director at Iconic London. Both brands are all about the glow. Tanning, glow, shimmer.
Right.
And we're going to be talking about influencers today. So Karen, let's start with you. And Bondi Sands, just tell us a bit about your history and how the brand was one of the first globally to start using influencers, before influencers were even a thing.
Yeah, so maybe who knows of Bondi Sands here? Hopefully a few. Good. That's great. So our brand, I think it's becoming better known. We've actually only been around for 8 years and in the UK for 5.
You've taken 35%.
But we've already taken 35% market share in the UK tanning market, and we've got lots of new exciting things still to come. Our brand was born off influencer marketing, so that has stayed really part of our DNA right since the beginning. We started, our two co-founders back in Melbourne started in their garage packing up boxes, probably like many startups, in a very small way. We didn't have buckets of money, and it was all set up through influencer marketing, sending products out to people and getting them to talk about them on our behalf. Now, obviously, the market's very, very much moved in terms of influencer marketing. We now pay influencers, but we also do a lot of activity at the other end of the scale. So we've just launched a new skincare brand today, actually, and part of that strategy has really been getting back to grassroots influencers. So globally, we've put 12,000 products in people's hands, and we know that will create content and authentic content, which I think is a really critical part of creating brand advocacy and communicating to your consumers in a really authentic way. Gen Z and millennials are very, very, will call you out if something doesn't look authentic, as you'll well know, I'm sure. So that's, for us, is very, very clear. A very clear KPI of making sure we get really authentic content and genuinely get great feedback from our influencers. And
what's the difference to, say, putting the product in 12,000 people's hands and getting them to talk about it versus, say, running an ad on television?
For us, we get much better return on investment. Obviously, sending that number of products out isn't a cheap operation to do. I think the beauty of influencer and digital marketing as a whole is it's very measured. You can very easily see the return on investment, the spike in sales. With our retail partners on eCom, you've got trackable links. You can really easily see whether something is or isn't working, which is mentioned earlier. Like, if something isn't working, you can change it quite quickly. So you can see whether your products are resonating with the audience that you're sending them out to, etc. So for us, I think that's the key piece. I think versus the old traditional above the line marketing, you can spend a huge amount doing a page of advertising in a magazine, but you don't necessarily know how many people that's actually sent to your website to purchase or otherwise. So for us, I think that's part of the piece is you can have KPIs. You need to know what are you setting out to do. That's probably the first thing that's really, really important, is to make sure you understand what your objectives are. But the fact that you can measure it, I think, is a really advantageous.
Brilliant. So Eleanor, tell us a bit about Iconic London.
So as a brand, we are all about getting that fabulous natural glow. But we do a lot of referring to our business and our activity around dating. That's the analogy. There have been a lot of analogies today. That's our favorite one. We actually also started in a garage, so that's also a theme running through today. But really, what we do is we think about it in terms of the relationship that we establish with the consumer. And influencers have that relationship already established with their followers. So we don't want to have a lot of one-night stands. We want to take our time and develop the relationship. And we think about it very much in that light. And so while, yes, we love our KPIs and we love measuring the return on investment, we also do think about investing in the long-term relationship with different circles of trust to then develop that honest and true communication with our consumers.
So when we talked about your influencer strategy and it being like dating and relationship creation, you were talking about it in terms of people wanting to have heard about the product from multiple different people that they trust and like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, we always say with my team, it's like, okay, you saw him on an app or her, and then you're trying to figure out.
This is real world dating, right? This is
This is real world dating. I learned from my team quite a lot how things have changed over the years. But we talk about it very much in terms of, you want to check it out. You want to see what other people say. You want to see if anyone else knows them. You want that referral that comes from multiple sources. So whether it's you first hear about us through a friend, and then you see it on an influencer, and then you check out our social spaces, and then maybe you eventually go to our website. That's a whole journey that we need to be responsible for. And that also includes some of the other topics that have been discussed today, where, it's not just once they learn and purchase, it's everything that happens after that purchase. And as a brand, we really want to be about those fabulous moments that are really iconic in your life.
So we've talked about different categories of influencers. You referred to them as being sales drivers and engagement drivers, and you talked about micro-influencers and macro-influencers. How do people take decisions over who to work with and what types of influencers? Karen, do you want to go first?
I think first it's understanding what the objectives you're trying to do with your campaign are. So like in my role, we're marketing our brand in a number of countries across Europe, and they're at very different points in their life cycle. So sometimes the activity that we're focusing in is really about reach. It's about building brand awareness, and it's about that repetition of message. And you're not necessarily trying to get lots of information across. Sometimes it will be much more about conversion to purchase, in which case there's maybe more education in the content, and you're trying to target someone and convert them right the way through the funnel much more quickly. So I think going back, it's what are you setting out to achieve? And then we have a scale. We look at reach, which is the very obvious piece for influencers. How big is their sphere of influence? And we have 5 categories in our strategy, right from megas, which are 2 million plus, down to nano influencers, which may only have a few thousand followers, but actually maybe have a very strong, authentic following, and where you'll get your conversion very, very quickly. So I think we look at very much in terms of what's the objective of the campaign, and then work on an influencer profile that fits that. And of course, understanding who your target consumer is as well, because you have to find the right fit of influencers. And that's something that we actually manage in-house. And sometimes it can be from conversations you have with those influencers where you've realised they are a good brand fit, or actually they're just not the right brand fit. The way that they speak, or when you're having conversations with them otherwise. And I think that's also really important to find the right influencers to work with if you're operating in that area as well.
And Eleanor, we talked about the constant debate in your office between should it be a small influencer or a big influencer, a famous one or an everyday one, and the search for that perfect balance and perfect relationship, to bring back to your dating analogy.
Yeah, we work with all sizes of influencers and all types, but I think the thing is we have limited budgets. We're not, endless, money to spend. And so for us, it's always about finding that balance, whether it's product mail outs or paying for the influencer or working with an influencer over a long period of time to get that relationship established so that we can then capitalize on just that relationship and get organic content that is incredibly valuable.
And what's been your highlight of an influence experience and the impact it's had on the business?
Well, there are 2 probably. One is the origins of the brand. Illuminator, our hero product, was picked up by influencers, and they just fell in love with it and talked about it, and the business ballooned. And then more recently, as a slightly larger business, we've worked really hard to establish our relationships with certain influencers, and we've had a phenomenal success with our most recent product launch on October 11th called Glaze Crayons. There's a beauty influencer called Michaela who has got 8.59 million followers on TikTok. She's like a really important influencer in the beauty sphere. And she received the product fell in love. We then had a gazillion duets with other influencers, and all of that was organic, but that's a long-term relationship.
What is a duet? Because we talked about that, and I looked it up, and they all started referring to her content and kind of making content about her, making content about your crayons.
Yes.
That's a duet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Karen, what about you guys?
I think for us, we had a very, I'm going to say luck, because I think there is a degree of luck. Sometimes an influencer will pick something up and you get a big win. So probably back at the beginning, I'm talking 3 or 4 years ago, we had an organic post from Kylie Jenner, which obviously had massive reach. It particularly resonated very well with our target consumer, which skyrocketed and propelled the sales of the brand overnight very, very quickly. So I think you get one of those nuggets now and again, which, you know...
That's a pretty impressive nugget,
though. It's that one, obviously, and that's why it's a highlight, because it obviously is something that...
We had a Kardashian.
Which, you know, you can't always plan for those activities, but, you know, if you place your products in the right places, at some point you will get that lucky streak of get that one that is the break. And then often, as is the case, it's like a domino effect, is once one person's picked up on it and that level of profile, suddenly you've got 10 or 12 other people also talking about it, and it can resonate quite quickly. So, you know...
What is the impact of a Kardashian or Kylie Jenner posting about your products?
Well, generally very positive, but I guess with all of these things, it can swing both ways. But in our particular instance, like, we sold out overnight, and then you had all the challenges, operational challenges of getting back in stock and getting your supply chain up to the same level of sales. Yeah,
they're incredibly powerful, but I do think that they're, as Karen said, a nugget. And what really drives that's a spike that you'll see, but that's not necessarily healthy to always have. I mean, we love a spike, don't get me wrong, but you don't always want that, if you're not establishing true relationships with your consumers and your target audience.
And also a challenge to anniversary the next year as well.
When you have to repeat the same sales.
Repeat the same level of sales.
But you haven't got Kylie Jenner again. I can imagine that. Brilliant. Thank you both. That's wonderful, amazing feedback about influence. If anyone wants to ask these guys any questions, I'll be around, so do. And thank you very much, Eleanor and Karen.
Thank you.